Hey everyone, welcome to the moon forecast. We have the full moon happening in Taurus with a lunar eclipse coming up. I'm Kendall with the Bohemian Tarot Girl, and this is my co-host, Amy. Amy, give a shout out for yourself.
Hi, I'm Amy. I'm an intuitive energy coach and Moon Circle leader with Wild Tree Awakening. And this is when we get together and kind of do a deep dive into the moon energies that are coming up.
I'm actually really excited about this moon. It is happening, like I mentioned before, in Taurus. It's at 5 degrees and 9 minutes of Taurus. So, right in the beginning part of that sign. And so, if you are someone who's a fixed sign, meaning you're a Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, or Aquarius, you want to look in your chart and see if you're from 0 to maybe that 10-degree mark, and see if it's really in your chart, and you can kind of gather a little bit more information on how it's being drawn to you personally. Um, this full moon is really a reflection, and it's so interesting because we're seeing this eclipse happen, and it's really that end of the cycle, and we're starting to see it's asking us really to look back and see what has come before. How do you feel about that, Amy? Do you feel really drawn to like looking at what's come into your previous existence, specifically in November of 2021? So,
So this cycle, we always talk about eclipses as being this portal energy that's going to fast track a certain area of your life and create major transformation in some way. And and of course we're always constantly transforming. It's just that when we get into these certain energies, and this has been the Scorpio and Taurus axis, that hits certain parts of your chart that are really going to illuminate where that transformation is taking place for you. So go ahead and look at what houses Taurus and Scorpio land in, and that'll kind of give you an idea of where things have shifted dramatically since November of 2021 when we started this whole cycle. Um,
well,
there are some pretty I feel like Taurus and Scorpio in general has these really intense themes. We always talk about with full moons how there are two opposing energies that we're dealing with, and how they're being illuminated and mirroring each other, and how to kind of find common ground in them. With this lunar, or not even lunar, but like this whole node cycle of the
mhm.
Taurus Scorpio axis, this is something that we have been dealing with for 2 years now. And this, I'm kind of partial because I am a Taurus. And so these are energies that I work with pretty regularly. And because of how my chart lands, Taurus typically is in the second house energy, and Scorpio is eighth house energy. And my chart is flip flopped because I'm a Libra rising. And so my Scorpio is in the second house, which is normally ruled by Taurus. And my Taurus, where my sun is in the eighth house, which is themes of Scorpio, which has to do with transformation and death. And so we have these opposing energies typically where, you know, the light and the dark, and the
Mhm.
birth and death, and creation and destruction. And so when we're working with these, you might find places in your life that have really undergone kind of a shedding of an old skin, a removal of things that weren't working, and then also at the same time, like this kind of new life being birthed out of the process. Um, and I know for me, especially, I was looking back at this, and I knew that um, when these eclipses started in 2021, that something was on the verge of really shifting.
Mhm.
And it was November of 2021 when we had that first eclipse that I stumbled on this town in Mexico and got this urge to move there, which created this whole process of shutting this whole life that I had built and starting over someplace new. And during that, it's been a complete transformation in every way, in every aspect of my life. So that's just an example of some of the themes that you might be looking at. And for you, of course, depending on where it lands in your chart, it could be a totally different area of your life that is undergone. But I think it's the same themes of, death and rebirth, and um, destruction, creation, and also like Taurus is also kind of the more physical reality, and Scorpio energy is more the spiritual realm. And so you're having these merging of opposition happening in your life at this time.
I definitely think there is a lot of power in endings. And that, to me, this is what that moon is wrapping up and it's all about. Um, and I don't think it's negative. In case we didn't mention that anymore, I actually feel like it's really, uplifting and something that's going to bring in some changes into people's life. But with that, there is a lot of closing down. There is a lot of things are going to naturally end, and it's going to allow you to step into this new world that you're trying to create, the person that you're trying to be. And in a lot of ways, that's what that Taurus Scorpio energy is, right? You have Taurus, who is very earth energy, and they're thinking about the material and all the things that we want to surround ourselves here. And then I think Scorpio is a little bit more self-centered in that, in more of like what your subconscious really wants and desires. I think about it in more of like a passionate desire. And so I think you have those two conflicting energies who are coming in to help you create this rebirth into this time, which I think is wonderful. And I just think, paired with everything else that's going on, um, when we talk about the aspects, we have the Jupiter and some of the Mars energy, I think is just really powerful.
Looking at this chart, there was so many major players in planet
Mhm.
wise in both Taurus and in Scorpio. And so
Yes.
it's not just the sun and the moon that is being highlighted by this energy. It's We have Uranus and Jupiter both in Taurus, so they're being highlighted by this as well. And then we have Mercury and Mars, which are in Scorpio. And so
Mhm.
there's so many key players that are coming in, and I feel like these two signs in particular, there's a lot of depth and a lot of intuition, and um, it's really creating this perfect swirling of introspection and oh my gosh, the words I mean, like it's been a process of liberation, and so now we're at this final lunar eclipse, and it's closing out the cycle, but it's also bringing to light maybe some areas where you're still resisting or self-sabotaging or self-limiting your potential, for where you're going to go next. And so I think that's a really important key to keep in mind, is like pay attention to what's coming up during this time, because even though it is kind of a graduation of sorts, it's like you've graduated, and now what are you going to do with the knowledge that you've acquired, or the um, introspection that you've received, or whatever wisdom you've accumulated during this time. It's like you got to put it to work somehow.
Yep.
And are you taking that and embracing it and stepping into your full power with it, or are you kind of holding yourself back, and not utilizing all of the information and the gifts that you've been given during this time? So
Yeah. I mean, with that Mercury and Mars are conjunct, and they're both in Scorpio, and they're right there aligned with the sun in Scorpio too. And those energies to me are really a lot about like, how are you changing? How are you pushing yourself forward to create that new energy that you want. And that momentum is really being asked of you. And it's interesting because if you looked at the chart, you'd see Jupiter, and Jupiter's opposing um this energy right here. And it's also in Taurus. So you have Jupiter, which is all about this abundance and luck and all these wonderful things. And it's sitting in Taurus, and it's right near the moon that's in Taurus. And it's creating this energy of really being able to bring you whatever you desire if you're willing to look within. And that's really that energy that I'm seeing, is that you have this gift that's being asked you to look into your higher self from source, whatever you want, and really find out what you truly want. And if you do that, with that comes abundance, but you also need to counter it with the action that the Mars, Mercury, and the Sun are asking you to do during this time. And I really think that is what it's asking you to do. There needs to be steps put forth for yourself during this time, and that you need to take a little bit of action to get yourself there. There might be something that comes up and you're going to be asked to, maybe shut a door or to, take a step forward. And that's what you really need to consider during this time, is that action and that connection to what's really going to bring you into the new place that you and your soul really wants to go, because it's not necessarily the energy of us in this material world and what our ego or other people think we should have or create. It's really about what we truly want, right? It's that subconscious want. And we need to ask ourselves why. Like, when you get a message about creating, something, or you think you should create, ask yourself why. Like, what is the driving reason behind why you want to create?
Yeah, this energy is also along those lines. It's um really having you call out in like your most sense of integrity. Like, are you moving forward with integrity? Are you, because when we have this Mercury Mars aspect and this conjunction, Mars is a powerhouse,
Yeah.
and Mercury is how you communicate and how you interact with other people. And you have to be really careful when those two are together, that you are saying what you mean, um, and that you're saying it direct, and that you are not being manipulative or passive aggressive, that you're really just coming from a place of integrity, and that you are having like full responsibility for the way that you communicate and what you say and how you interact. And that you're also not letting your emotions run away with you. Because with Mars being fiery and it being in the sign of Scorpio, um, one of the things about Scorpio that is that you have to be careful about, like, oh my gosh, I don't know why I'm having such a hard time with the words today.
It's all good.
um, Scorpios have a way of kind of, we look at the scorpion and it has a way of kind of stinging you with their words if you're not careful. And so, with the Mars energy being behind this and it being conjunct in Mercury, um, there can be things that come out in anger or in uh, kind of destructive ways. And so,
Hmm.
just be aware of what you're communicating. Make sure that it is in line with how you actually feel. Check your emotions before you speak with others during this time, just to make sure that your message is getting through the way that you want. And also, like, pay attention to what you're allowing within your own energy field at this time, because um, you're responsible for how you interact, and you're responsible for what you allow in, and you're responsible for maintaining some kind of sense of self, without letting your energy field be distorted by the emotions and responses of other people. There's a meshing of things happening with this energy. So being really self-aware and reflective is pretty important right now.
Yeah, when I thought about this energy, it's interesting the way you put it, but I thought about it as coming and really experiencing your wild, your natural self, um, and really going to that level of your being versus staying in the level that everybody wants us to be in. And so there's a difference between, you know, I guess physically lashing out and being wild. And then there is that other aspect where, you know, the wildness is really calling to us and it's really asking us to step forward during this time and to pull that archetype out of ourselves and really figure out who we want to be and who we want to embody.
Mhm. And what, like, we're wild reawakening. And so when you think about wild, what is that? And it's kind of like your most authentic self and your
Mhm.
most, I don't want to say unleashed because it's not really, but to some extent,
Yeah.
like you're showing up in your truest form and from a place that is really driven by like your heart center and your natural spirit. And so I think sometimes, we all see things through our own lenses. And some people are really connected to that authentic part of themselves, and some people are really uncomfortable with that part of
Mhm.
themselves. And so when we say like, or when I say, when I was talking about this, like pay attention to how you're reacting to things or what you're bringing to the surface and how you're relaying it. Just make sure that it's coming from the authentic part of yourself and not a reactionary response to whatever external emotion or stimuli is happening. Because not everyone isn't as in touch with.
Mhm.
It's a process.
And that is very, very true. And in general, I think, you know, there are other um astrological things that are probably going to happen during this time frame that might trigger some people. That's not necessarily tied to this inner growth that we're really working on with the moon energy. You know, but there's always triggers within our outside world. And so we have to make sure that we're adjusting to that and we're making sure that we're taking note of it. I think it's really important to see how that piece is really working into our world, right? Into our idea of ourself, because it's amazing when we step back and take a look at how why we're actually creating the person that we are, right? It's a lot of times we're doing that because of that exterior world and not really what we want internally. So really pay attention to that. I think this is a great time to let some things go in our life with this full moon and really, you know, close and end some things. But it's also this great time to experience this new person that you want to be, this new lifestyle that you want to be. And it's really about bringing that into this physical world, this physical earth.
And after this, like with this closing out and this graduation of this kind of energy, I mean, these are cyclical. So we usually do this, what, like every nine years or something. Yeah,
Mhm.
about every 9 years we'll shift. It'll be opposite though. So we're looking at even longer cycle for the energies of the eclipse nodes switching places. So we won't see this for a while, but take time now to kind of look at like what are you understanding or seeing now in a new light. What realizations have you had about maybe how you were operating in the past that um, no longer serves the direction that you're going, um, and how are you going to move forward with this realization. We do have um, Venus in Virgo
Mhm.
at 18 degrees. And Venus in Virgo is interesting to me because in its highest aspect, it's like the embodiment of like a perfect divine love. In its negative aspect, it can be really critical of
Yeah.
all things that aren't perfect. So if we look at it from its most divine aspect and where it is, and it's having this trine to Uranus coming up in Taurus, which is giving it a boost. It's like this transformational energy, heart energy. Um, that can bring something that's really needed and necessary and practical, but also beautiful at the same time into your life. And so you might have this realization that maybe something that um, you've been resistant to, or were kept trying to make sense of, wasn't quite fitting. And then you might see that in all the ways it was actually what you needed and not.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of that resistance that you may have had towards why this should be in your life, or what this love should feel like, or what beauty you could have, because Virgo is very analytical and it can talk itself out of a lot of things.
Yeah.
Try to make sense of it, and it can look for all the reasons why it's not going to work. um, if we can kind of transmute that and give it a little bit more grace, we can start bringing in some of these things that maybe we've wanted or needed all along to kind of help us make this transition into whatever is next.
I like that. And it really, it's interesting because if we look at Venus and what's going on, Venus, it's gone from being in retrograde, and we don't see it as moving when it's in retrograde. So as it's starting to speed up here, and it's actually like starting to really get moving, and it's coming out of that retrograde, um, here we have this opportunity with this energy to really see and make some shifts. And I think this is a good key point when we're talking about anything that Venus energy really relates to, the love, our passions in our life, and really taking that moment to step into that change, and taking those opportunities. And I think, when you pair it with all this other great energy, there are some awesome opportunities for you guys to step forward and to make some changes. And in general, things are just going to be brought into your life too, if you're open to it.
There's so much supportive energy right now. And I know we keep talking about how it's so much about letting go and then rebuilding and letting go and rebuilding.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like this being like the final closure of that, and we did just come off of the solar eclipse in Libra and Aries, which is the next axis, that and it is what we're moving towards. Um, it's nice to kind of like finally see the progression happening and the evolution. And there's so much really at this time to kind of embrace and be grateful for, and move forward with, and whatever new trajectory is coming into your life, and really kind of be proud of like how far you've come in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
It has been a wild ride. I agree, Amy. Um, I didn't mention before, but once again, this full moon is in Taurus. It peaks on October 28th, at 1:24 Pacific Standard Time or 4:24 p.m. Eastern. So just keep that in mind. When we think about doing work, we're doing that within a couple days before and after this, with this moon energy cycle. So just pay attention to what comes to you during this time. Really question, what happened back in November. It was very specifically November 19th of 2021. If you want to get really specific about the date, but look at November and see, what was going on, what were the themes during that time, and really focus in on closing out anything that needs to be closed out in this time. So anything else you want to add, Amy, before we wrap it up?
I don't think so. Um, yeah, just pay attention to the direction, and if any what self-limiting beliefs or self-deprecating thoughts are coming in right now, because that's going to give you kind of some insight into the work that you're going to be doing with this Libra Aries axis, because that's all about self and others and how you relate. Um, so there is a progression that happens, but we work on one area and then that sets us up to work on whatever is next.
Yep.
But And I think you should really be proud of all that has happened recently in the last couple of years.
I love that. That's a good way to end. Well, thank you, everyone. And we will see you again for the next moon. Have a grateful moon. Do your work, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.